Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this week's GTN News Show. In this episode, I'm highlighting a conversation I had with Cliff Simon. He came on a recent event I did and talked about community-led growth and really how can you as a seller tap into niche communities. It's very similar to social selling, but the idea really is how do you really tap into communities that your ideal customer is hanging out in, and provide value, build those relationships over a long period of time. So that could be Slack groups, that could be obviously in-person events, that could be Facebook groups, whatever it is, wherever your customers are hanging out, your potential customers are hanging out, you go there, you provide value. You don't sell, but you build those relationships. You give first through these communities. The key in these communities, and what Cliff will talk about, is ultimately giving first, right? You can't go in there and try to sell. It's a great way to get kicked out of those communities, but it's a great way to have a reputation of somebody that's just trying to sell versus building those relationships. So let's jump in and listen. Thanks for coming on. You're going to be talking to us all about how to tap into niche communities. And even Mandy was talking about maybe more the macro communities, the large communities, social selling on like LinkedIn. Cliff, you're going to kind of bring us some insights into how to build, drive revenue with tapping into more of the niche kind of private communities. So lay it out for us, Cliff. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. My name's Cliff. I'm the CRO at Caribina Group, and we've grown pretty substantially over the last few years, focusing on that community-led growth motion. A lot of that shows up in places like Slack nowadays, but this is not something that's like brand new, right? This stuff I was doing years ago, pre-pandemic, showing up locally, right? Typically at those conferences, and if your company wouldn't pay for you to go to the conference, it was showing up at the bars and the restaurants and the places and sniping the people that had the appropriate badge, right? But building authentic relationships with people, getting to know them. Now that we're in a post-pandemic world, we do that in places like Thursday Night Sales and Sales Assembly and Pavilion and RevOps Co-op and Rev Genius and WizOps and on and on and on and on. The secret to that is showing up consistently and actually building relationships. I think all too often people are very willing to go into these places to try to reap some type of commercial reward, but don't realize that no one wants to be sold to. Right? So you have to show up consistently with empathy, be helpful, and actually provide value to the community. And by doing so, you start building out a brand, people start knowing you, and you start generating the word of mouth and referral business that so often drives most B2C brands, right? There's definitely this undercurrent within B2B of folks wanting to get there. And I think we've seen a lot of that over the last few years. Email is becoming really difficult, as Jesse's talked about. Outbound is something that most people aren't well trained on, and there's still a lot of need for that. Social selling is still, I think, in its infancy. There's a lot going on. You need to be able to reach people and build those relationships, and that's what really drives the business. And that's what helped Caribina grow so quickly over the last 3 years.
That's great, Cliff. So it sounds like obviously finding those communities where your ICP, your ideal customer profile, lives, engaging with them authentically, with empathy. How about some practical things? What does it look like? Answering questions, getting on a one-on-one call, and providing value, no pitching. Tell me about your thoughts and what have you seen has worked to build those long-term relationships and drive revenue?
Yeah, no pitching, 100%, right? With places like Pavilion and WizOps, the way we leaned in originally, and the way I leaned in originally was, I've come from almost 2 decades of go-to-market experience, varying industries. I'd lay in and just offer advice. It wasn't a, hey, I'm going to solve this problem for you. It was, I've seen this or dealt with it in X, Y, or Z fashion before. I'm happy to workshop that idea with you and see if we can help you come to a conclusion. And, we'll meet each other in the process. And it was never an ask of, oh, we do this, that, or we can build this for you. What that ended up turning into was people being interested in reciprocating. Maybe they knew some. And that was, they ask at the end of a conversation, it always inevitably be, oh, what can we do for you? I'm like, well, if you know anyone that needs help with RevOps, if you could remember my name, that'd be fantastic. And I can tell you the amount of times that folks have reached back out 3 months later, 4 months later. I just had one last week, 18 months later. Right? So these things, do it the right way. Right? It's about building the relationships, treating people like people. And good things do come. If you're looking for really practical ways to go in and do it, Slack has a keyword notification. You can go into the preferences, set up your keyword, and you can respond to those keywords when they show up, right? It's super, super straightforward to the point where I was booking on average 83 meetings a month using that as a tactic. Very easy. If you want me to show you how to do it, we simplify it really easy. But you do that, couple that with a DM, and yeah, again, you're not asking for time. You're offering your expertise and your help. Don't go in there selling. There's nothing that'll ruin your personal brand and your image worse.
I love it, Cliff. And any advice you have? So I know there's a lot of situations where I know a lot of folks that are in the cybersecurity industry that are on this event, and they may be an account executive and they're selling to, a CISO, a chief information security officer, and they may be asking really technical questions. How do you navigate when they're asking a question that's beyond maybe your expertise? How do you bridge that gap? Do you bring in resources? Do you find somebody that's the expert? Any thoughts there for that? I know it's kind of a unique situation, but any thoughts there?
So what I would say to that in any situation is you should be striving to learn all of those answers. If you want to be the expert and have your customers and folks in the community see you as an expert, you need to take the time to actually put in the work. Like, this is not an overnight thing, right? We had fantastic results in communities, but it took on average 4 to 5 months for us to get a first deal out of community. And then it started building up. The other thing to remember with this too is that it's not just digital. Everyone seems to be going back to in-person. All my CRO buddies who are having success right now in top of funnel, the majority of the deals are either coming from word of mouth referral from people that they're meeting in person, local events, dinners, conferences. So getting back out in person and building human face-to-face connections is vitally important. That's why I'm where I am today. I'm at home in New York, seeing folks. I'm going to be in Scottsdale next week, seeing folks in San Francisco the week after, because the face-to-face is so important.
Love it, Cliff. Awesome. Any final thoughts, next 30 seconds? Anything to leave folks with that we haven't covered?
I think the biggest thing is just treat people the way you want to be treated, right? The golden rule exists for a reason. If you can remember that and to think long-term, the things that you do today, especially if you're early in your career, will have a lasting impact. If you do things the right way and focus on a long-term plan of success, that will lead you to the best outcomes.
I love that. The golden rule. Yeah, I think that's so powerful when so much of marketing and sales is not that, right? We're trying to hack our way into a meeting versus actually treating people how they wanted to be treated. So using some empathy. So cool, Cliff. Thanks so much for coming on. Safe travels. Really great insights. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.